We are talking now about the topic of polynomials. We know one thing from this word polynomials. This poly means more than two, and this word nomial means terms. So which has more than two terms, that is known as to be called polynomials. In the previous topic, we have discussed about binomial. So bi means two. So when there are two terms, it is known as to be called binomial. And when there are more than two terms, it is known as to be called polynomials. Now for this, we have given an example of this standard equation. P of x is equal to axn plus b power x n minus 1 plus c x power n minus 2 plus d x power n minus 3 and so on. So this is a standard form of that polynomial there. Now, if p of x is equal to axn, where n is equal to 0, this means p of x is equal to only a there. So it is known as to be called constant. If p of x is equal to ax1 plus b, where n is equal to 1, then it is known as to be called linear equation. If p of x is equal to ax2 plus bx plus c, where n is equal to 2 there, then it is known as to be called a quadratic equation there. If p of x is equal to ax cube plus bx square plus cx plus d, then where n is equal to 3, then it is known as to be called a cubic equation there. If p of x is equal to ax4 plus bx cube plus cx square plus dx plus e, where n is equal to 4, the highest power, then it is known as to be called a quartic equation there. If p of x is equal to ax5 plus bx4 plus cx cube plus dx square plus ex plus f, where n is equal to 5, then it is known as to be called pentic equations. So these are the examples of these polynomials equations there. Now, we will define there are two values which are important in this case. One is n, which is the highest power. So this highest power can be either an odd number or it can be an even number. If the highest power is an odd number, then the graph's ends, that means ends of graph, will be in opposite directions. We will explain it later on. And if n is an even number, then the graphs, ends of the graph will be in same direction. For example, y is equal to 3x plus 1. The highest power there is 1. So the graph of this will be, this is 1. So ends of this graph, one is upward and one is downward. So it is in the opposite direction there. For example, y is equal to x cube. This is x-axis, this is y-axis, and this is one end upward and the right end downward to that. So this is when the highest power is an odd number, then the ends of the graph will be in opposite direction. And if n is an even number, y example, y is equal to 3x square, then the graph of this will be shown like this. This is y-axis, this is x-axis. So ends are graph in the same direction to that. Or y is equal to x4 plus 1. So this is power 4 there. So it is having a direction upward to that. So for this value, this 1 and the graph is like this. So left side is upward and the right side is downward. For example, y equal to minus x cube. Then the graph of this will be like this. The left side is upward and the right side is downward to that. Y equal to minus 2x square. Then this will is the nature of this graph that both ends are downward to that. Or y is equal to minus 2x4 plus 1. Then the graph of this would be like this, and both ends are downward to that. Now we classify between these values of n and a there, which are the coefficients of this highest power there. If n is an odd number and a is greater than 0, then the right side will be upward and the left side of that graph will be downward. If a is greater than 0, n is odd number and a is less than 0, then right side will be downward and the left side will be upward. Look at that. Here highest power is 1, the coefficient is -3. So left side is upward and the right side is downward. Here even odd power is there, 3. So there is minus coefficient there. So left side will be upward and the right side will be downward to that. If n is an even number and a is greater than 0, then both ends of the graph will be upward there. And if n is even number and a is less than 0, then both ends are downward to that. Look at that even power there. This 2 is an even power and the coefficient of that one is -2. So minus indicates that both ends will be downward. And if it is positive, then both ends are upward. So these are the examples of the few cases for this odd and even power for these values of polynomials of the ax power n plus bx n minus 1 and so on. You have seen in these examples that either the highest power coefficient is less than 0 or greater than 0. If it is less than 0, it all depends upon these values of the highest power, which is an odd and even. So if it is odd, then right side will be upward and the left side will be downward. And if the a is less than 0, then the left side will be downward and the right side will be upward. Same case when n is an even number and a is greater than 0, then both ends will be upward, and if a is less than 0, then the both ends will be downward. And we will elaborate it in the further examples of this topic of polynomials in our second phase of this polynomials topic.